The rip of fabric echoed in the backyard like a gunshot. Julia stood before me, my Hermès bag clutched in her trembling hands, her face etched with an expression of despair. I'll never forget. The expensive leather hung in ragged strips, and on the ground, scattered like wilted petals, lay the remains of what had been my greatest symbol of achievement. My heart stopped for a moment, then pounded so hard I felt like it would burst. "Julia," I screamed, my voice higher than I intended. "What did you do?" She stared at me with vacant eyes, as if just waking from a trance. The backyard fell into an absolute silence around us. My son, Raphael, ran to us, his face pale with shock, while the other family members remained paralyzed, like spectators of an accident no one knows how to prevent. "I didn't mean to," she stammered, letting the remaining pieces of the bag fall. "But she didn't deserve to have it. When I. Her words trailed off into a choked sob, but it was enough for me to understand the gravity of the moment. This wasn't just about a destroyed bag. It was the end of an illusion I'd maintained for years about who my daughter-in-law was, who my son was, and most importantly, who I really was. The pain I felt at that moment went beyond the material. It was as if all the silent humiliations, all the judging stares, all the whispers I pretended not to hear, had materialized in those pieces of expensive leather scattered across the lawn. And it was in this moment of utter devastation that I realized my true journey was just beginning. 3 years before that fateful Sunday, I was a completely different woman. At 52, I lived a predictable and secure life as an administrative manager at a mid-sized company. My 28-year marriage to Robert had become a cordial coexistence, but passionless. My son Raphael, then 25, still lived with us, working part-time and studying law at a private university we paid for. Life followed its monotonous course until the day the company where I had worked for 15 years was sold. The new administration implemented a restructuring, a polite word for firing older, experienced employees in favor of recent graduates who accepted lower salaries. I was laid off on a rainy Tuesday in March, taking only a modest severance package, and the bitter feeling that my experience had been discarded like old furniture. Robert reacted with the characteristic coldness I'd learned to accept over the years. "You'll find something better," he said, without looking up from his newspaper. Raphael didn't even comment, absorbed in his video game. At that moment, sitting alone in the kitchen, looking out at the garden through the rain-streaked window, I made a decision that would change everything. I've always been passionate about fashion, but I had buried that dream decades ago to be the responsible wife and mother I thought I should be. That night, I unearthed my old sketchbooks and browsed through magazines I'd kept for years. The passion was there, intact, waiting only for an opportunity to resurface. I started small, offering image consulting to friends and acquaintances. My first client was Mary, a retired neighbor who wanted to update her wardrobe. For $50, I spent an entire afternoon helping her rediscover her style. I saw her eyes light up when she looked at herself in the mirror, wearing a combination I had created. At that moment, I knew I had found my purpose. The first few months were challenging. I woke up at 5 in the morning to study trends, analyze international magazines, and develop a portfolio. I made tight budgets, investing every cent earned in online courses and materials. Robert subtly mocked my hobbies, as he called them, while Raphael treated me with the typical condescension of someone who thinks their mother is going through a phase. But I persisted. Each client gained was a small victory. Each transformation I facilitated gave me more confidence. In 6 months, I had a roster of loyal clients and was starting to charge fair prices for my work. In a year, my schedule was full, and I had opened a separate bank account for my earnings. It was during this period of professional growth that Raphael met Julia at a college party. She was a 22-year-old, beautiful and charming, the daughter of a traditional family in town. From the first meeting, I noticed something peculiar about her behavior. Julia greeted me with overly broad smiles and calculated compliments. She constantly commented on the beautiful things I wore, always with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "What lovely earrings, mother-in-law," she'd say, touching them without asking permission. "Where did you buy them? They must have cost a fortune." Initially, I interpreted this material obsession as typical age-related immaturity. After all, she was young, came from a well-off family, and had probably never had to worry about money. But over time, I realized there was something deeper to that fixation. Julia started frequenting our house more regularly, always finding reasons to rummage through my bedroom or my office when she thought no one was watching. I caught her several times going through my things, trying on my jewelry and perfumes. When questioned, she would laugh nervously and invent flimsy excuses. "Oh, mother-in-law, I was just admiring them. You have impeccable taste." Raphael, completely smitten with his girlfriend, saw nothing strange in her behavior. When I tried to talk to him about my concerns, he reacted defensively. "Mom, you're being paranoid. Julia adores you. She always speaks highly of you." It was true. Julia spoke well of me, but in a way that made me feel like an object of admiration rather than a person. She treated me like a living display case, always commenting on my clothes, bags, shoes, as if I were a well-dressed doll instead of her future mother-in-law. During this time, my business continued to grow. I had developed a solid reputation in the city as an image consultant, serving everyone from housewives looking for a style refresh to executives who needed to project authority in their careers. Each professional success was also a personal achievement, proving to myself that I was capable of more than I ever imagined. That's when I decided to make the biggest investment of my career, an Hermès Birkin bag. It cost me almost 6 months of rigorous saving, giving up dinners out, new clothes, and even my monthly haircut. But for me, that bag represented much more than a luxury accessory. It was the materialization of everything I had achieved through my own merit, every dollar earned through honest work and tireless dedication. When I finally bought it, at a boutique in New York City during a business trip, I felt an indescribable emotion. Carrying that bag was like carrying a silent trophy of my transformation. From a laid-off employee at 52, I had become a successful entrepreneur at 55. During those 3 years, I saw my marriage to Robert deteriorate gradually. He never accepted my financial and professional independence. He felt threatened by the fact that I no longer depended on him for anything. Our conversations became increasingly rare and superficial. We slept in the same room, but lived completely separate lives. Raphael, in turn, graduated from law school, but showed little interest in working seriously. He preferred to depend on the allowance Robert gave him, rather than pursue a solid career. Julia supported this attitude, constantly suggesting that he deserved a comfortable life after so many years of studying. The couple seemed to live in a bubble of unearned privileges, financed by Robert's patience and indirectly by my silence. The relationship between Julia and me became increasingly tense. She had developed a disturbing habit of making seemingly innocent comments, but loaded with subtle venom. "Mother-in-law, you're so lucky to be able to buy these expensive things. I wish I had that freedom. Wow, that ring is beautiful. Raphael would never give me something like that. It must be nice to have your own money to spend on luxuries, huh?" Each comment was a small jab, a subtle attempt to make me feel guilty about my success. Julia had noticed that my growing prosperity contrasted with the couple's stagnation, and instead of being inspired to grow as well, she preferred to try to diminish me with these constant provocations. But I didn't let myself be shaken. I had learned that success bothers those who are not willing to fight for their own dreams. I remained focused on my work, expanding my clientele and perfecting my skills. For those who follow stories like this and understand the journey of personal transformation a woman can go through after 50, it's always worthwhile to stay connected with stories that inspire overcoming family adversity and strengthening female self-esteem. The problem was that Julia wasn't content with just making comments. Over time, I realized that she started inventing situations to gain access to my things. She would show up at home when she knew I wasn't there, asking Raphael to borrow some item she knew was in my room. She always found excuses to go through my bag when I left it in the living room. One time, I discovered that some smaller jewelry had disappeared from my jewelry box. When I questioned her, Julia acted offended. "Mother-in-law, how could you think that about me? I would never take something that wasn't mine." Raphael, of course, defended her, treating my suspicion as unfounded paranoia. But I knew what I had seen. I knew what was missing. I started being more careful with my belongings, storing the most valuable pieces in places only I knew. It was in this atmosphere of increasing tension that Sunday in March arrived, when I decided to use my Hermès bag for family lunch. It was a special day. We were celebrating Robert's birthday, and I wanted to feel beautiful and confident. I had worked all week with difficult clients, resolving image crises and transforming wardrobes. I deserved to treat myself to the fruits of my labor. When I entered the room carrying the bag, I immediately saw the impact it caused. Julia's eyes fixed on it like a magnet, and I could see the explosive mixture of desire and resentment on her face. Robert raised his eyebrows with that air of disapproval that I knew well, as if I were doing something inappropriate by using something I had bought with my own money. "What's with the show, Helena?" he muttered, pretending it was a joke, but I caught the critical tone. Raphael seemed embarrassed, looking alternately at me and Julia, as if he sensed something was about to happen. But it was Julia who broke the silence with that phrase that would echo in my mind for a long time: "He should get me one just like it." The he obviously referred to my son, as if Raphael had an obligation to present his girlfriend with luxury items that cost more than he earned in an entire year. But there was something more in that comment, a sense of entitlement that deeply disturbed me. During lunch, I tried to maintain normalcy, but I felt Julia's constant gaze on the bag. She barely touched her food, completely obsessed with the object I was carrying. She even asked to see it up close twice during the meal, always with that forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. After lunch, when everyone spread out into the backyard to chat and relax, Julia approached me once more. This time, her hands trembled visibly as she asked to hold the bag. "Please, mother-in-law. I just want to feel the leather. It must be so soft." Against my better judgment, I gave in. Perhaps out of pity, perhaps out of politeness, but mostly because I still believed there was something human in the young woman my son had chosen to love. It was the biggest mistake I could have made. What happened next destroyed not only the handbag, but also the last illusions I held about my family. Julia began to examine every detail of the bag with a disturbing intensity. She opened and closed the clasp several times, ran her fingers along the edges, examined the seams, as if searching for something specific. And then, in a sudden and incomprehensible movement, she began to rip the straps off the bag. "Julia, what are you doing?" I shouted, trying to retrieve the bag. But she stepped back, continuing to systematically destroy each part of the bag. Her nails tore the leather, her fingers ripped open the inner seams, as if she were looking for something hidden within the structure. "I know it's here," she murmured, almost delirious. "I saw you hiding it. It has to be here." It was at that moment that I understood the true nature of Julia's obsession. She wasn't simply destroying my handbag out of envy or spite. She genuinely believed that I was hiding something valuable inside: money, jewelry, important documents. In her distorted mind, I was a greedy woman who flaunted wealth while hoarding resources that should be available to her and Raphael. When I finally managed to recover the remnants of the handbag, I found Julia crying uncontrollably, repeating between sobs, "Where do you hide the money? I know you have much more than you show. Why don't you share with those in need?" That's when the truth came out, revealed amidst tears and incoherent accusations. Julia had grown up in a family that appeared wealthy, but who were actually deeply in debt to maintain appearances. Her parents spent far beyond their means to support a lifestyle incompatible with their actual income. She had become accustomed to the idea that wealth was something that was outwardly displayed, not something built internally through hard work and discipline. When she met Raphael and our family, she automatically assumed that we also lived this charade of appearances. In her mind, my growing prosperity could only be explained by some shady scheme or hidden inheritance. The idea that a woman in her 50s could build wealth through talent and dedication was completely incomprehensible to her. "You can't have earned all this just doing consulting," she shouted, still holding pieces of the bag. "There has to be something more. There has to be." At that moment I looked around and saw my whole family watching the scene. Robert was standing a few feet away, with an expression that mixed shock and something akin to satisfaction, as if the humiliation I was suffering confirmed his suspicions that my success was artificial or temporary. Raphael seemed completely lost, looking alternately at me and his girlfriend as if he couldn't process what was happening. But what happened next really shocked me. Instead of defending his mother from his girlfriend's gratuitous aggression, Raphael approached Julia and enveloped her in his arms, whispering words of comfort. "Calm down, honey. You're nervous. Let's talk at home." He was comforting her, comforting the person who had just intentionally destroyed something that had cost his own mother months of work. At that moment, I understood that my son wasn't the upstanding man I thought I had raised. He was a spoiled young man, accustomed to being supported, who chose to support his problematic girlfriend instead of defending the mother who had sacrificed for him for decades. Robert finally approached, but his words were even more painful than Raphael's silence. "Helena, you provoked this situation. You kept showing off with that expensive bag, as if you wanted to humiliate those who have less. It was obvious this was going to be a problem." At that moment, I felt as if the ground had opened up beneath my feet. My husband was blaming me for being assaulted. In his view, the problem wasn't Julia's destructive and irrational behavior, nor Raphael's lack of character. The problem was that I had achieved something beautiful and allowed myself to use it with pride. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of apologizing, diminishing myself, or trying to appease the situation as I always did, I looked directly into each of their eyes and said, "You're right. This situation really reveals a lot about who we are. And now I know exactly who each of you is." I gathered the pieces of the destroyed handbag, put them in a bag, and headed inside. But before entering, I turned once more. "Julia, you're going to pay for a new bag. That's not a request, it's a statement. Raphael, you have until tomorrow to decide whether you want to be my son or her accomplice. Robert, happy birthday. I hope it's memorable." That night was the longest of my life. Sitting alone in my office, looking at the remnants of the handbag scattered across the desk, I cried all the tears I had held back for years. I cried not only for the lost handbag, but for everything it represented: years of hard work, silent sacrifices, dreams realized through sheer determination. But as I cried, something within me crystallized. An absolute certainty that I would no longer allow anyone to diminish my achievements or make me feel guilty for my success. I had spent years building a new version of myself, and I wouldn't let toxic people destroy that construction. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity of mind I hadn't felt in years. I called my lawyer and asked him to start the process of separating from Robert. I also called a real estate agent and scheduled visits to see apartments. If my family couldn't appreciate who I had become, I would find people who could. Raphael showed up mid-morning, alone, his face haggard from a sleepless night. He sat across from me in the kitchen, and for the first time in years, really seemed to see me. "Mom, I need to apologize." I waited silently, giving him space to continue. "I didn't realize how sick Julia was. She told me things about her family, about the financial problems they hide. She thinks everyone with money is dishonest, because her parents always were. But that doesn't justify what she did to you." He paused, running a hand through his hair in a nervous gesture I'd known since childhood. "I broke up with her, Mom. I can't be with someone who disrespects you like that. And more than that, I can't be the kind of man who doesn't defend his own mother." His words touched me deeply, but I knew that real change requires more than just kind words. I looked into my son's eyes and saw, for the first time in a long time, the upright young man I had tried to raise. "Raphael, I forgive you, but you need to understand something. I'm not going to accept being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family anymore. If you want to regain my respect, you'll have to earn it." He agreed, and in the months that followed, he showed through his actions that he had learned his lesson. He started working seriously, accepted an internship at a prestigious law firm, and for the first time in his life, refused his father's allowance to learn to support himself. Robert, on the other hand, reacted very badly to my request for separation. He tried to convince me that I was overreacting, and that I should forgive and forget the incident with Julia. He even suggested that I was having some kind of midlife crisis, and that I needed professional help. "Helena, you're destroying our family over a handbag. This is ridiculous." But I wasn't destroying the family over a handbag. I was freeing myself from a marriage that had become toxic, and from a family dynamic that constantly belittled me. The handbag had been just the catalyst that revealed problems that had existed for years. Julia, surprisingly, kept her word and bought me a new bag. Not a Hermès, she obviously didn't have the resources for that, but a beautiful high-quality bag that cost almost 2 of her paychecks from the store where she worked as a sales associate. The gesture surprised me and showed that there might be hope for growth, even for people with such deep-seated problems. A few months later, Raphael told me that Julia had started therapy and was working through her issues with money and self-esteem. Apparently, the destruction of the handbag had been her rock bottom, the moment she herself realized she needed professional help. During the separation process, I discovered that Robert had hidden several accounts and investments over the years. Ironically, he was doing exactly what Julia had accused him of, hoarding money instead of sharing it transparently with the family. The discovery made the division of assets more complicated, but it also gave me a sense of validation. My instincts about the character of the people around me were correct. Today, 2 years after that fateful Sunday, I live alone in a modern apartment downtown. My image consulting business has grown exponentially, and I now have a team of 3 employees. Raphael graduated with honors from college and is building a solid career in law. Our relationship strengthened after the crisis. He learned to value me as an independent woman, not just as mom. Robert still lives in the house where we lived for so many years, but we rarely speak beyond what's necessary for bureaucratic matters. Sometimes I feel a pang of melancholy when I think about the years we lost, but I never regret the decision I made. As for the Hermès bag, I bought another one, even more beautiful than the first, but now it represents something different. It's not just a symbol of professional achievement, but a reminder that I have the right to enjoy the fruits of my labor without apologizing or explaining myself to anyone. The whole story taught me valuable lessons about toxic relationships, dysfunctional family dynamics, and the importance of setting healthy boundaries. I learned that some people can't celebrate others' success because they interpret the prosperity of others as a criticism of their own mediocrity. I learned that allowing disrespectful behavior in the name of family harmony actually creates more problems than it solves. Most importantly, I learned that it's never too late to rewrite your story. At 52, when I was laid off, I could have settled into the role of a victim of circumstances. Instead, I chose to reinvent myself and discover potentials I didn't even know I possessed. The journey wasn't easy. There were sleepless nights, moments of doubt, tears of frustration, and fear of failure. But each challenge overcome made me stronger, more confident, more aware of my own worth. Today, when I work with clients who are going through transformations in their lives, I share not only technical knowledge about fashion and image, but also this experience of personal rebirth. Many women come to me, thinking it's too late for significant changes, and I can look them in the eye and say with absolute certainty that it's never too late to become who you truly are. The destroyed handbag paradoxically became one of the best things that ever happened to me. It revealed truths I needed to see, forced decisions I had been postponing, and gave me the courage to prioritize my dignity over family convenience. Sometimes I still think about Julia and wonder how she's doing. I sincerely hope she's found help and is building a healthier relationship with money and success. Her behavior that day was unacceptable, but I understand it stemmed from deep-seated hurt and a distorted upbringing regarding values and self-worth. What makes me most proud today is looking in the mirror and seeing a woman who doesn't apologize for her accomplishments, who doesn't accept being belittled by insecure people, and who has built a life based on authenticity and integrity. This woman carries expensive handbags without guilt, invests in herself without asking for permission, and sets clear boundaries about how she allows herself to be treated. The most powerful lesson I learned is that our response to adversity defines who we are more than the adversity itself. We all face unfair situations, toxic people, and moments of humiliation. What determines our character is how we choose to handle those situations. I may have lost a handbag that March Sunday, but I gained something far more valuable: the absolute certainty that I am a strong, capable woman deserving of respect. And that certainty, unlike any material object, is indestructible.